Tantor Audio presents Inside the Real Area 51, The Secret History of Wright Patterson by Thomas J. Carey and Donald R. Schmitt. Narrated by Paul Boehmer. Just the facts, ma'am. Sergeant Joe Friday, Detective Division LAPD. Record enough facts, and the answer will fall to you like a ripe fruit. Franz Boas, American anthropologist. Forward by Tracy Torme. I was working on Star Trek: The Next Generation when the disconcerting word came down that Gene wanted to see me. This was Gene Roddenberry, the creator of the Star Trek franchise, famously nicknamed the Great Bird of the Galaxy. As I entered his office, I could instantly tell he wasn't pleased about something. Uh-oh. It was never a good idea to upset Gene. I had a unique and wonderful father-son relationship with him, but I had also witnessed his temper on certain occasions, and it's fair to say I always wanted to remain in his good graces. Gene looked up at me with a tense hint of a smile. "I understand you're thinking about working on a movie about Travis Walton," he said. I was surprised, as I would never have expected he even knew who Travis Walton was. I cautiously told him it was true. I was in the early stages of working on the project that would eventually become the Paramount feature film, Fire in the Sky. Roddenberry practically leapt to his feet, his face turning crimson with rage. "Don't you know this UFO stuff is bullshit?" he bellowed. "It's all nothing but crap. They are never seen by astronomers, never seen by pilots, just drunken farmers at 3 a.m. There's not a shred of physical evidence, no real photographs. Tracy, how on earth could you do anything to promote this myth?" Gene's anger and indignation were truly surprising and a bit intimidating. Throughout the years when I've told Star Trek fans his position on UFOs, many refused to believe me. This is the world of scorn that my friends and colleagues, Don Schmitt and Tom Carey, must cope with as they pursue their excellent work in the badly misunderstood field of ufology. I was to have similar confrontations throughout the years with Ray Bradbury, Seth Shostak, and Carl Sagan. They each treated my fundamental belief in the existence of UFOs as if it equated with believing in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. It is in this difficult arena that Don and Tom have done their groundbreaking and vitally important work, the latest being this seminal book on Wright Patterson Air Force Base. Don and Tom have excelled at separating the wheat from the chaff in all their books. Their wonderful and thorough work about the Roswell incident has exposed several truisms about the field in general. The Sagans and Roddenberrys of the world are dead wrong. Schmitt and Carey are the ones who see the light. UFOs are a serious and endlessly compelling mystery that demands the kind of first-class examination that only top-notch investigators like Tom and Don can bring to the table. When they sunk their teeth into the Roswell story, it was fascinating and illuminating to see how they approached the challenge of exposing a now 66-year-old event. The fact that first-hand witnesses are getting old and dying was the least of their problems. Both authors banked on their impeccable reputations and personal integrity to form a layer of trust with those who are brave enough to come forward with their recollections. The fact that Don and Tom are intelligent, personable, and trustworthy to the extreme has been a key factor in convincing vital witnesses to come forward. Don and Tom have relied on these same qualities to help unearth the fascinating history of Wright Pat. So how do they manage to produce such vital and compelling work? Well, there is certainly a method to their madness. It all begins with their disciplined and comprehensive approach to whatever they are tackling. The two men are outstanding researchers who leave no stone unturned in their quest to get to the truth. Wright Patterson is a key player in the UFO story. We all owe Don and Tom major kudos for taking on such a difficult and important task. Don and I are old friends. Although Tom and I don't know each other as well, I hope that changes in the future. Don is a baseball fan, and so is Tom, a big plus in my book, and we share a common belief in American exceptionalism, which got me thinking. After the critical Battle of Yorktown during the American Revolution, when the defeated British Army marched out to lay down their arms to the upstart rebels, their band played a song called "The World Turned Upside Down." This could be the theme song for first-class UFO researchers like Tom and Don. For them, the world is in many ways upside down. The UFO quandary is misunderstood, misreported, and routinely distorted. We should all be truly grateful that we have men like Don Schmitt and Tom Carey who have the persistence and fortitude to expose the truth to a world that is largely asleep at the wheel. Tracy Torme, Los Angeles, California, March 2013. Introduction. Psychologist Dr. Thomas Gilovich has succinctly defined our objective in writing the book you are about to hear. He portrays the condition known as healthy skepticism this way: an awareness of how and when to question, and recognition of what it takes to truly know something, are among the most important elements of what constitutes an educated person. With that supposition, the authors of this tome question the official version of what we will demonstrate to be the biggest secret in the history of this country. Within the past 20 years, the Roswell incident has become an international household phrase, synonymous with cover-ups and government deception. The true nature of what actually crashed in New Mexico in 1947 remains classified, even above the Oval Office, as evidenced by the failed disclosure efforts of Presidents Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, and Bill Clinton. As earth-shaking as that event was to humankind, only a select few have ever had access to the truth. Initially, the media was essentially banned from reporting all pro-UFO research that would contradict the more mundane official explanations, surely a blow to the egos of journalists seasoned from their coverage of World War II. Moreover, to preempt any future curiosity about the true nature of UFO events, the press has been systematically indoctrinated in outright dismissal of the subject. Derisiveness and debunking of such tales became the rule of the day, and public deception has risen to an astronomical level. Never in the course of American history have elected officials tasted more cynicism and rejection from the doubting Thomases of society, whose efforts planted the seeds of suppression. Yet, the story is too big, too important to relegate to the cold, abandoned warehouse of forgotten history. President John F. Kennedy had this to say about such secrets: "The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and materialistic resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military and diplomatic intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned. No secret is revealed. As investigative authors, we are confident that we have provided enough circumstantial evidence sufficient for victory in any courtroom. Evidence that a craft and crew of unknown origin crashed outside of Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. It is this premise from which we will work throughout this book, probing the depths of Wright Patterson Air Force Base. The real Area 51. Among the many questions we ask is this: if an event of such significance as this, the crash of an extraterrestrial craft, took place, what should we expect from the government and those placed in charge of the aftermath? How would they react? History has documented very specific actions on the part of officialdom that clearly suggest they were responding to an event of an extraordinary nature. For example, the Roswell incident did not just fade into the background with the explanation of a mere weather balloon device. To the contrary, the military's action gave every indication that something far beyond their control had taken place. What transpired in the shadows after all the physical evidence was retrieved and transferred up the intelligence channels left our government totally in the dark. For one brief moment, on July 8, 1947, the public's worldview was totally altered with the Army's announcement. RAAF, Roswell Army Airfield, captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. Within the next 5 hours, the substituted balloon explanation provided reprieve, but not for those assigned to defend and protect us. To them, the world would never be the same. From their perspective, our sovereign shores had just been obliterated. Eyes were fixated on the skies. That which was once relegated to the domain of science fiction was now a reality as stark as death itself. And just as with death, no living creature on planet Earth knew what was on the other side. As the chapters unfold, you, the listener, will hear countless attempts by our leaders and our military to wrestle with not only the notion of being threatened by a power beyond our own, but also the complete impotence they felt when dealing with such a phenomenon. What began in the most remote desert region of New Mexico continued at the ultra-top-secret military facility named Wright Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Truly, it was only the end of the beginning. The futile attempts at reverse engineering, the dissection of biological remains, all would find this top-secret facility as deep and black as space itself. Our visitors from the stars were swallowed into the underground morass known as Wright Pat. If the National Museum of American History is America's attic, Wright Patterson AFB is definitely its basement. It was there, with all the accumulated physical proof and documentation, that we were being observed from outside our planet, that this nuclear-equipped United States Air Force stronghold earned a stellar reputation for secrets going in, but seldom coming out. How tragic that the needs of a few have decided, for all of humankind, that such seismic news should be kept from us forever. Pieces of history now quickly dwindling into oblivion as the last of the secret keepers pass away. In spite of its rich and historic military service to our nation, Wright Patterson stands as a tombstone over one of the greatest discoveries in all of recorded history. For more than 30 years, it was ground zero in the government cover-up of UFOs. Be prepared. The UFO vault is about to be opened. Chapter 1. Wright Patterson AFB. Even secret locations have a history. Military installations are similar to government buildings, schools, post offices, and the like. They are typically named after a famous person with no other connection to the facility than that they happened to be next on the honors list. Wright Patterson was clearly the exception. Its namesake could not be more appropriate or more deserving of such a distinction. The land on which the base is located today has much more history than ever taught in any schoolbook outside of Dayton, Ohio. However, anyone with any knowledge of aviation fully knows where it all began, when man first tried to put an engine in a crude skeleton of a machine and get it off the ground. Wright Patterson has the distinction of being founded on a dream that man could fly. It's where Orville and Wilbur Wright risked life and limb on an 84-acre stretch of land known then as the Hoffman Prairie Flying Field back in 1904. They kept hoping their new flying contraption would stay in the air for just a few seconds more. But gravity relentlessly prevailed. Like the biblical Noah and the construction of the ark, the brothers Wright stood on their personal conviction that destiny was just beyond the next cloud. A flat, open field was the best they could manage, and they could not make the device any lighter. Then, on December 17, 1903, in another vacant patch of grass at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, the first successful powered flight took place. While Orville watched from the ground, Wilbur wrestled with the makeshift cable controls and managed to keep their Wright flyer in the air for a whole 12 seconds, flying just 120 feet. Through pure perseverance and a good tailwind, the modern age of aviation was etched in all the history books on that monumental day. Man could fly, albeit for just a dozen heartbeats. Could the moon be that far away? In the next 5 years, the famous brothers started their own instruction facility and named it the Wright Company Training School of Aviation. Manned engine flight was about to gain the watchful attention of Uncle Sam. Ironic that this invention was not mothered by war, but it was about to be drafted by its presidium. As the Kaiser spread his aggression throughout Europe, the United States was obligated to assist its allies and entered World War I in 1917. In short order, 3 government-funded military installations were built in Dayton, each to provide for the accelerating war effort. In addition, as fate would have it, 2 of these would eventually become part of what today is Wright Patterson Air Force Base. One site was Wilbur Wright Field, and the adjoining installation Fairfield Aviation General Supply Depot that was operated by the Army and provided logistical support to its neighbor, along with other military needs throughout the Midwest. After about a year, in 1918, the 2 airfields successfully staged a number of joint exercises. Both used McCook Field in downtown Dayton for the storage, service, and assemblage of aircraft and their engines. Aviation was quickly becoming a corporate enterprise, and the Wright brothers were still in the forefront, as no one could match their know-how. With the ending of the war, the Wright Training School was eventually shut down, and the 2 merged to become the Fairfield Air Depot. But, as destiny would have it, the military was not finished with the brothers. In 1924, Wright Field was established as a new appurtenance in the continuing effort of the Pentagon to build on the successes of the previous air war. The Army Air Corps was a proven war machine, and Wright Field would lead the way in protecting the United States from the sky. It was only fitting that the newly formed base would be dedicated to both Wilbur and Orville Wright. To this day, their name and legacy remain synonymous with all things aeronautical. Soon thereafter, Wright Field became the headquarters of the Materiel Division, which was a main branch of the Army Air Corps, and in 1920, the Technical Data Section, TDS, was created. Together, it was their main responsibility to develop and design advanced aircraft, equipment, and accessories. Engineering laboratories were constructed, and all concepts of flight were studied and perfected at the growing facility. Lieutenant Frank Stewart Patterson had long championed the mission of the base and worked diligently to keep Wright in the heart of Dayton. It was only fitting that the city rewarded him by designing Patterson Field as an adjoining base on the east side. Even though Wright and Patterson were 2 separate installations, their projects often augmented and strategically complemented one another. each providing areas of technical support or facilities and technicians the other did not have. For example, in 1942, Patterson redesignated TDS, the Technical Data Laboratory, TDL, and then T2 Intelligence, on July 1, 1945, which specialized in metallurgy and reverse engineering. Whenever a more advanced foreign design was recovered for analysis and study, Patterson Field was the most likely destination. It was also at that time that T2 became especially learned in the physical aspects of the newly arrived phenomenon of flying saucers. If such flight characteristics as commonly described by witnesses were accurate, visionary minds must have reeled with all the possibilities. Is it any wonder that during and after World War II, both facilities saw a dramatic expansion? From 3,700 employees in 1939 to more than 50,000 by the end of the war. They played an important role in the Allied victory. The Materiel Division at Wright handled the procurement of aircraft and their parts on production lines around the country, which resulted in increased testing and development, whereas the Air Service Commission at Patterson maintained the hardware's logistical assimilation into the war. By 1944, the Pentagon realized that this was a duplication of effort and dropped the separate commands at each base. In August, both were then placed under the newly established Air Technical Service Command. It was during the war years and immediately thereafter that major project funding and facility improvements were done, all deemed necessary by Washington. Extended concrete runways were poured, the first at any American base, along with larger labs and test sites, and an increasing number of office buildings for the growing number of civilian employees on the base. During the war, more than 300 new buildings were constructed to house such headquarters as the Air Materiel Command, the USAF Medical Center, the Air Force Institute of Technology, and the Air Force Research Laboratory. After the surrender of Germany in 1945, both airfields gained major military advancement from the Luftwaffe. Patterson focused on the hardware and what advancements, if any, made it superior to our own, while Wright conducted all the testing. On the Pacific Front, the Technical Air Intelligence Unit, TAIU, took possession of all captured Japanese aircraft and equipment after the final surrender. In December of that year, TAIU was transferred to the operation of T2 at Wright Field under the directorship of Lieutenant Colonel Howard McCoy. It was one thing to recover the enemy hardware. It was another thing to learn how to use it. Fortunately, we were able to capture their inventors. "Show us how it works," was the principal objective of Operation Paperclip, which provided the United States with more than 200 German scientists of the highest regard. Though most of them were former Nazi Party members, they worked in close collaboration with their American counterparts on all aspects of military technology. This would cause an explosion of aerial technological advancement, of which most of the data ended up at Wright Field for testing. Many of the German scientists worked closely with T2 tacticians who specialized in engines, aerodynamics, and new material construction. It was their mandate to 1. Ensure the prevention of strategic, tactical, or technological surprise from any source. 2. Provide intelligence required for command decisions and counsel upon air preparedness and air operations. 3. Enact appropriate counterintelligence measures. Both logistically and in matters of national security, T2 was the single most proficient agency to handle the recovery, containment, and disinformation of anything recovered from the air. General Douglas MacArthur had previously instructed Air Technical Intelligence, a predecessor to T2, at the end of the war in the Pacific to take complete charge of all enemy crashed or captured aircraft or personnel as early as possible after the crash. With the ever-expanding role of the Air Corps, the decision was finally signed into law that the Air Force would officially become a separate branch of the military in September 1947. Army airfields simply became airfields, and in 1948 the term airfield was dropped in favor of Air Force Base, concomitant with the merger of Wright and Patterson airfields into a single, unified base, Wright Patterson Air Force Base. Now that the air was conquered, could space be far behind? The facility would create one of the first labs experimenting with monkeys and apes for upper atmospheric testing. During the 1960s, sonic booms rattled nearby windows as B-52 bombers roared over Dayton from dawn until dusk. Clearly harbingers of things to come, former Wright Pat test pilots were astronauts Neil Armstrong, the first man to set foot on the moon, and Edward White, the first American to walk in space. Hangars were now housing wind tunnels, and tests concerned supersonic and suborbit aircraft, and Wright Patterson led the way. Ever the center of high-technology war strategy, the base became headquarters of the USAF Logistics Command. Wright Patterson leads the way into the future of America's defense with the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. This is the DoD's primary source for both foreign and space threats. As a fitting tribute to the base's dedication to our national security, the personal files of Nikola Tesla are preserved there. Outside of the UFO community, few are aware of Wright Patterson's distinction of maintaining the U.S. government's official investigation of the UFO phenomenon from 1947 until 1969. With its vital experience of testing and reverse engineering all materials both foreign and from space, it is a historical fact that whatever crashed outside of Roswell fell under their purview. It is also a documented fact that the debris from New Mexico was sent to Wright Field, clearly demonstrating that it qualified for one of those two distinctions. Our investigation will demonstrate which of the two has the most supporting evidence. Again, we ask, if it was only a weather balloon device manufactured with the most common materials, why was it sent to Wright Field for identification and analysis in the first place? By the time you finish this audiobook, there will remain little doubt what the true answer to that perplexing question is. The event in 1947 required the most sensitive and secret facility our military could provide, and Wright Patterson AFB wrote the very book on the question. What makes something fly? Today, it arguably is the most important Air Force base in the world. Respectfully called the Field by residents of Dayton, Ohio, it has become a state-of-the-art military installation covering nearly 13 square miles of secured buildings, labs, hangars, and runways. Likewise, from all accounts, a good portion of it is underground. It employs more personnel, both military and civilian, than the Pentagon, with a payroll of more than $1 billion a year. Nuclear-armed aircraft from the 906th, the 2,750th, and the 4,950th stand ready to answer the call to all corners of the globe. Air Force logistic systems developed there, including most of the engineering of future aeronautical breakthroughs, will soon take us to the stars. And Orville and Wilbur will be waiting. Chapter 2. The Mystery of Hangar 18. Solved. No, sir, there is no Hangar 18 here on the base, and there never has been. So says the perfunctory voice on the other end of the line that has been trained for more than 30 years by the Office of Public Information at Wright Patterson Air Force Base to respond that way to people inquiring about Hangar 18. When visitors come to Wright Patterson for tours of the base, the main question they all seem to still want the answer to is, Where is Hangar 18? You know, where the aliens are stored. So are the public relations representatives of Wright Patterson AFB shamelessly lying to the public?
Sample complete. Ready to continue?